Hi everyone, how are you? I am doing a video today on the Cricut. I know a lot of you using our designs like to print them out and craft in physical paper form, and I certainly don't blame you. It's a nice thing when you have something tactile and everything else. But I know that we've had lots of emails and different things about questions about Cricuts and how do I use it properly, and can you answer this and can you answer that? And I thought, you know what? Let's do a quick tutorial video on how to use our designs with the Cricut. So let's get started here by going into Google Chrome. It's not my normal browser, but it is the one that you have to use with Cricut just because their software is online. So quick thing about these cutting machines, there's the Cricut, there's the Silhouette, there's the Brother Scan and Cut. You know what, if you're in the market for a cutting machine and you're wondering which one should I buy, you know what? They all have their pluses and they all have their minuses. We ended up with a Cricut. Ours is a Cricut Explorer, and we're really, really happy with it. We find it cuts well. It is, the blades don't wear out too quickly. You can adjust the settings in terms of what medium you're cutting, whether it's a really, really thick cardstock or it's thin paper, things like that. The biggest thing is how it cuts. I know that Silhouette does probably a good job as well, and I'm certainly not disregarding them. But just like Cricut, the downside is their software is online. So which means if you have a bad internet connection or even just to use it, you have to actually go through your internet browser. And like I said earlier, here we are. I have to use Google Chrome, which is not my normal browser, but it's the only way to do what we call print and cut. It doesn't work with a lot of the other web browsers. It used to, and now it doesn't anymore. So this is kind of one of the drawbacks, but it is one of the only drawbacks of Cricut. So when you go to Cricut's homepage, you'll see the Cricut design space. That's what we want to click into, as you probably already know for those of you that have Cricuts. And so we're into now actually going to create a new project. So we're going to want to press the little blue square down here, and we have our blank canvas. So now you probably have used your Cricut and you've used their shapes. So we'll go to upload images for a second. And you've probably used Cricut shapes and stuff like that, but obviously if you're buying our designs, you want to be able to use our designs with it. So you kind of want to know, well, what's the easiest way of doing this, and how do I do print and cut and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing to do is, once we've opened up our blank new creative space, we want to upload an image. So as soon as we press that, it's going to ask us, okay, please go into your computer, hit the browse button, and go into your computer and tell me exactly which file or which image you actually want to use. So let's just go back a little bit. So what ends up happening is we have to navigate to that Nitwit Collections folder. So that's what I'm doing here. We go into here. Look at all the Nitwit kits that we have. Holy smokes, isn't that a lot? I bet you I've got more than you, and I hope so, right? So let's just use our Cherished collection as an example. If we go into our FQB and we say, okay, I want to cut out this floral, let's do this floral. So we highlight it by clicking on it, click the open button at the bottom, and then we let it do its thing here. So when it comes up here, you're going to see that there's a simple image, a moderately complex, and also a complex image. With our designs, because they are quite intricate, as you can see with this floral border over here, you always want to choose complex image. Okay? So once you get the little check mark, you can press the green continue button down here in the corner, and it brings up a new page. Now they say select and erase. So what you can do is you can actually alter the image a little bit, or if you have had some white background. But when you're using our images, you never have to worry about this. This is why they're saved as what we call a PNG file. They're a .png. The PNG file leaves it transparent in the background, so you're just getting the image itself. It's not picking up anything else. So you never have to do anything on this page. You just simply press the green continue button down in the lower right corner, and it brings up this one. So when you're using our images, you always want to save as a print then cut. If you do this one, and we have the green check mark on here, save as a cut image, well, that means that you're not going to print it out first. Somehow you're using, just a blank square or blank silhouetted images or things like that. We always want to check this, make sure the check mark is clicked so it's saying, yes, I want to use it as a print and cut. And then we click the green save button in the bottom corner. Now it takes a little bit here, and again, this will depend on your internet connection. We have a pretty good internet connection, so this will give you an idea on timing, how long this takes. But this is, like I said, the downside is using software online. That's the only part about it that, you know, I guess I wish they would come with an offline program, which they've talked about for several years, but I don't know that they're necessarily moving forward on that, because I've asked them, you know, over the last couple of years, you know, hey, when is this coming out and everything else, and they've never ever said anything about, you know, an actual time span. So this page is going to disappear for us in a second, and it'll take us back to our upload images pages, and here we are. It is going to add, here it is our first image. Okay, so it's saying, okay, that has now been uploaded, and you can now use that and insert that if you want to into your sheet. So you have two options. If you know, like most times if you're creating a mini album or a card or scrapbook layout or doing some home decor things with it, you kind of already have chosen, I want this image and I want that image and everything else. So you kind of already know which ones you're going to do. So usually what I like to do is upload all my images first, because then that way you get this tedious kind of task out of the way. So what else are we going to upload? What's something that has another intricate thing here? What if we did this topper here? Let's just upload this. And again, it's the same sort of process. We browse through our computer, we find the exact file that we want, we click on it to highlight it, we open it up, we choose complex image, we press the green continue button in the lower right corner. Again, this screen for the select and erase, we don't have to do anything with, so we just press the green continue button. This one, it automatically already comes up as save and print because that's the last one we did, and we want to do that again. So we click the green save button in the bottom right corner, and now it kind of does its thing, and we kind of sit and wait a little bit, right? Always patience, eh? I don't know if you guys are really patient people. We're not. That's why you get your downloads immediately when you order from us. We don't like to sit around and wait, and you know you gotta wait for something else to happen. But you know what? That's part of it. So then I get to blather. Look at me. Let's talk about something nice, right? Spring's coming. The flowers are going to come out soon. So here we are, almost done. So it's going to flip over to that screen once again. And we're going to go through some tips and tricks here right away, which is kind of nice. Hopefully this will let you learn a few things as well in using your computer in general, not only in the Cricut program. We're going to highlight a few things here right away so that you'll see how you can add things really quickly by doing multiple items rather than having to do them one at a time. So come on, Mr. Cricut, here we go. So now as you can see, we've got both of these images now loaded in our library along with a bazillion others that I've done, right? So what we're going to do is as you hover your mouse over, you see it highlights that box in green saying, okay, you want this one? What you're going to do is we can add both of these images in one fell swoop. So hold down, if you're using a Windows-based computer, you hold down your control key and hold it down. If you're using a Mac, you use your command key. So we hold that down, we press our left mouse button to select that, then we move to the next image that we also put up, and while still holding our control key, and we click on that one. So now I've got two images selected. I let go of my control key, I press the green insert images button in the right corner, and it's going to add both of those images at once. So see how we got both of them? Cool. Isn't that nice? You can do the same thing. I'll just do this really quickly. Just in your computer. I've just opened my Windows thing. Let's just go into pictures for a second. Let's go into this here. Okay, it's the same thing when you're in your file folders in your computer. You can hold down your control key or your command key, depending on what you're using, and you can select any items, and there you go. You've selected you can pick and add to, basically is what it is, so that you can select multiple items and do it in one fell swoop rather than having to do each one individually. If I click that off, so I've got nothing selected now, I hold down my shift key, it selects them all. Well, that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to choose ones in different sequences, which is what the control key does for you. Okay, enough of that digression. So back into Cricut. So we want to move these around so that we have them in their right spots, so that when we go to print and cut, we're actually, we're using up our paper for us. Now, the other thing about Cricut that isn't great, because you have an online program, is when you use Google Chrome, your actual printable area, okay, so you have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Let's just use a standard printer. So normally your printer is, your big piece of paper is 8.5 inches wide and 11 inches long. Unfortunately, when you use Chrome, because you're using Chrome, their limitations are only 5.5 inches by 8 inches. So you have to keep your images within that border, okay? So when you make them larger, because when you've already done your images and you know that, okay, I want to put this topper on, but I want it at whatever. I want this image to be, say, 4 inches tall and 3 inches wide. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just 1 second. You have to remember that when you arrange all of your images on this paper, rather than wasting too much paper, we want to put on as many images as we can within that 5.5 by 8 inch area, so that we can maximize our paper thing and everything else. But you have to stay within those guidelines. Okay, so to resize, obviously in the top corner, this is an X. That would just basically delete that item. This one with the half circle will allow you to turn it. Okay, so you can reorient it different ways, which is kind of nice, because then that way you don't have to have everything printed straight up and down. You can move stuff to the, turn it one way, turn it the other way, because it doesn't matter. It's cutting it out, and then once you have the image, then that way you can fit more things in this bordered area. And the last thing is to size it. So when you go on this lower right-hand corner blue button, you're going to push and hold down your left mouse button, and right away immediately you see a sizing box come up where it shows the width and the height. Now that may be a little small for you on your screen, but basically when we drag while holding our left mouse button until we said we wanted it 4 inches high and 3 inches wide. So we drag that until those numbers equal 4 inches by 3 inches high. So it actually ended up being 3.25, but so there we go. We've resized it to the exact size that we want for our project. Now we click on this item and we say, okay, we want this one to be, say, 3.5 inches. So here's 3.5 by 1.92. Okay, so now we've got our two images on here, and we know that, as you can see, the border of this is going by the 8 inches. Okay, so this is where I was talking about. We can take this and turn it 90 degrees, lay it on its side, and it doesn't matter if it's exactly square. It doesn't have to be perfectly horizontal, because it's going to cut it out no matter what. So now we can stack our images in here and get more images on one sheet. Now I've got some pretty big images on here. Normally you may not be putting them quite so large, so you're going to be able to get several images on this one sheet when you go to print. For ease and to shorten the video here a little bit, I'll just do these two images and go through the rest of the process for you. So now we've got them sized. We've got them so that they're within our 5.5 by 8 inch border. What do we do next, right? Well, you've got a few options. You can save this. You can click File and Save it as, because maybe you're not going to do it right now. You just want to, walk away from your computer and you don't want, power to go out, or somebody else to delete it for you or something. You can do that, but you don't have to save it, because these images are now saved in our Upload Images area. So the images are always permanently in there. When you go, the other thing to look at before we start doing anything is when you come over, we'll call this our Layers panel. Okay, so this shows our image, which is our topper, and it also shows us our corner flower cluster, which is this one here. So beside it, you see an actual little printer. You want to make sure that you see that printer. If you don't see that and you see a little pair of scissors there, you've missed a step, which means it's only going to cut the image. It's not going to print and cut it. Okay, so we want to make sure that that is there. So when we click on that little printer, you can see this, and you can actually change this if you want. If you thought, oh, I forgot a step, you can change these to all kinds of different things. Okay, but we want to make sure that the print one is highlighted. Okay, the other thing is what is this little eyeball? Well, you can hide them. You can see that image appearing and disappearing. Okay, which means you could actually add like all of your images to one canvas. Okay, Then just take the images, place them in your bordered area, turn the little eyeballs on, and so you have those ones on. You turn the other ones off, and it doesn't recognize them now. It's not going to do anything with those images, but yet you still have them all on there. So you can just quickly go through the process of, okay, I've done these images, it's in its print and cut mode. Okay, let's do another set so that you can move the process along quicker for printing and cutting everything out. Okay, so there we are. The nice thing is they do have the rulers along the top and the side, so you know exactly what you're doing in terms of, it looks exactly like your cutting mat. So you do have that, so you know to stay within the bordered guidelines. And now we'll move on to actually doing it. So we press the little green go button at the top, and it's going to take us to a new page that is going to show us what it's going to look like on our cutting mat. So this is using the 12 by 12 cutting mat, not the larger size one. So it's saying, look, if you have a piece of paper, I've actually changed these around as Cricut and said, you know what, I'll put them like this for you because this is going to be a little better arrangement. Again, that's perfectly fine. It's no big deal. It kind of does whatever it wants. You're going to see these little black lines on here. These little black lines are called cutting marks or alignment marks. There's a whole bunch of different names for them. But basically, these black lines will print out when you print your page. You want those on there because as soon as you adhere this printed page to your cutting mat, your Cricut is going to read those lines. And it's going to read those lines and say, okay, I know exactly now spatially where this is on the page so that I can cut this out perfectly without being off a little bit or things like that. So these alignment marks are very important and you will see them on there. Okay. The other thing is when we come over here, you can have as many copies if you want, because maybe there's a few items you're going to use 2 or 3 times, especially if you're doing a mini album and you have lots of things. You'll also see under here more matte settings. We want to click that on. Underneath you see bleed for print then cut, and the box is checked. Okay, what is a bleed? Well, a bleed actually gives you a little bit extra larger than the image, and it will do it automatically for you. This is a super feature for anybody who's done professional printing. We have, and it's a pain to have to bleed those images yourself. It'll basically make this leaf a little bit greener all the way around, and it'll follow the same shape, but it'll add about a pixel of green. Then when it flows into the blue background paper, it'll add the blue, and it'll add the pink of the flower and everything else. So it's basically almost like enlarging the edges of the picture a little bit. And the reason for that is in case your machine is off just a hair, like just a very, very little bit, you won't have any white space around here. Now, you can choose to leave that on. There's no problem leaving that on. But what it does is you have to remember, see how close these 2 images are? If these 2 images are too close, that bleed will then, from the 2 images, is going to encroach on each other. Well, now when it cuts, it's going to think this is all one image, and it's not going to cut out the middle here like you want it to. 9 times out of 10, because I've worked with the Cricut and I know that it works so well, I click that off. I don't want them to bleed it. I want you to cut the exact image exactly the way it is. So that way I can actually have images that are a lot closer to each other and I don't have to worry about it. Okay. Also, material size, 8.5 by 11. Well, that's our standard size when we do this. Okay. One other quick thing before you do this, for those of you who this is the very first time you've ever done it, you're actually going to go through another step before you get here, and it's going to calibrate your Cricut. And so it's going to ask you to, you feed a sheet of paper in, it prints a whole bunch of lines, and then it asks you which one is best, and please let me know. You have to go through that calibration step with your Cricut if you've never done print and cut before. Please do that. That's very important, and you only have to do it once. You never have to do it again. It's a one-time thing that you calibrate it, and then that way your machine knows exactly how to cut things properly as well. Everything is lined up so that this image and how it's talking to your machine matches up perfectly how your machine will cut. Now, once we've done this, we've dealt with our bleed, we've made sure we have the number of copies, we make sure our paper size is right. You'll see the green go button down in the bottom corner. We press that, and oops, I don't have my Cricut on. Let's just turn that on. So we have to make sure that that is on for us. So there we go. So now it's basically telling us the first thing it's going to do is print. So we are going to, and it says set, so it reminds you, hey, what are you cutting? We use, for paper, we use a matte presentation paper, which is a 44 pound, or let's give me a GSM here, 165 GSM. We've tried all kinds of papers and we've tried all kinds of everything. And I encourage you to do the same, because just because I particularly like this doesn't mean you will. But if you want a starting point and you're saying, I don't know what paper to use, we use an Epson matte presentation paper. You can order it off of Amazon. You can find it at office supply stores such as Staples and Office Depot and those kind of places. It is fairly common. You don't have to use the Epson brand. There's several brands out there or whatever, but you do want a good quality paper. It does actually make a difference in how your colors print and all that kind of stuff if you're using a good quality paper, okay? And also, this 44 pound cardstock, as an example, if you were to go to the craft store and buy a piece of paper or a chipboard element like that was cut out of paper, that is about the thickness that it is. So that gives you a frame of reference. So now what we would do is we would hit print page, okay? Comes up with a new screen, and again, it shows you they're actually called registration marks, okay? We'll call them alignment marks because that's a little easier to understand. So it shows you exactly what's going to print. There's your printable area. There's the marks that are going to print. On the left side here, it has printer, okay? Now, in case you have more than one printer or whatever, maybe you have a regular printer and a wide format or whatever, you can change your printer and choose a printer. We want it in a color. We want it in letter, one copy. A lot of this stuff here you're probably not going to use. So now we will click the blue print button, okay? This is where I'm actually not going to do it because obviously I'm filming everything on screen here, so it's not. I'm not going to videotape anything because the lighting in our office isn't great for videotape. But I will show you some other things as to how it does print and cut. So simply you're going to press print. It is actually then going to start printing on your printer, okay? When it's done printing on your printer, this is exactly what it'll look like coming out of your printer. You have the images, you'll have the black little lines, and the rest of it's blank. You're going to attach that or adhere that to your cutting mat, okay? You're going to see on your Cricut, you see that up and down arrow kind of, and it's flashing saying, please load me. That's the loading button. You're going to stick your mat into, once you have it on your cutting mat, you're going to stick it into your Cricut. You're going to press that button and it'll load your mat in for you so that it's ready to go. And then your green Cricut button will flash. You push that green Cricut button on your Cricut, and there's nothing more to press on your computer screen. It's all done on the Cricut now. And off it'll go. You'll see a little light come on your cutting head, and it'll move it around, and it'll go around, it'll read these registration marks, then it'll go over this one, it'll read this registration mark, it'll go to the bottom, it'll read the registration mark. So then that way it's done its job, and it says, okay, I know exactly where this image is on the page now. Then that light will go out, your Cricut will then move its mat around, and it'll start cutting for you, and it'll cut it all out for you. So one tip is the lights. The lights in your office or in wherever you have your Cricut, you want to make sure that it is a fairly dim in your area that you're using this, whether that's your craft room or your office or whatever. By dim, I mean almost like a cloudy day, but meaning turning off your overhead lights or things like that. You don't want it pitch black or something. Like, you can have it that way if you want, but you kind of want to be able to move around, and you don't want to have to fumble through things. But if your light is directly shining on your Cricut, you are going to end up where it doesn't cut for you properly. That's one of the tips and tricks. It doesn't read the registration marks properly because it's not bright, like the bright light when it's reading it. It's reading more light and different things like that. So that actually makes a mess out of it. So the huge tip, turn your lights off. Like I said, make it almost like a cloudy day. Dim them down if you have dimmer switches, that kind of stuff. And you will have a perfect cut. So I'm going to show you that perfect cut. I'm just going to get out of this, and we are going to go into our Cherish mini album, which is, let's go into here. So I use this when I did this mini album video, and you'll see that as well, is I used our Cricut in order to do this. Oops, wrong spot, sorry. I used our Cricut in order to cut out the elements because it is so much quicker, and I have papers to cut out. So I certainly, while I'm printing out papers and everything else, my Cricut can be doing those elements, and then that way, when you see this, that Cricut cut out this butterfly. See how intricate it is? Even the little antenna, it cut it out. You don't see any white things around the edges, okay? This is how it cuts it out. It is perfect for you, right? I'll show you another picture here of our mini album. Where's a good one here that shows more cutout things? Here you can see, again, this floral cluster I used, it cut it out perfectly. There is no white things around the edge. I didn't use the bleed. I remember I turn off the bleed so I can get more images on my paper. But look at how well that cuts it out. Rather than fussy cutting and things like that, I fussy cut like, this tag or whatever, things that are, pretty much square. That stuff you can do, as well as all your papers. But boy, does it speed up the cutting process when you use a cutting machine. It is amazing. And the results look as professional as anything that you would buy that was professionally done. It really astounds me, in all honesty, for a $400 machine that you have in your home, that it can do stuff like this. It really is worth the money that you pay for them, right? Same thing, you can see how the shadowing, because this is up on the sticky foam dots, you can see how well that cut it out. Look at the antenna. Those are fine, fine, fine prints that it cuts out. So it even cuts out, like this flower stem, this is all cut out in here. And there's just this tiny little flower stem in here, which is probably about 1 millimeter wide. It cuts out intricate things. It cut out the hole in this grommet, right? So that hole shines through. It really does the intricate stuff. So I hope that I've given you some good tips and tricks. I'm sure that you probably even have more questions still, because you're going to get to use your Cricut now and things like that. But just get to using it. Start out with using it. Try it out for yourself. That is the tips and tricks where you should have really good results right up front, in order to actually get going and get using the machine. I know that they have all these complicated videos and all these complicated instructions, but there you are. That's as simple as it is in order to use your Cricut machine. I hope you liked the video. Please give us a thumbs up if you did. Please subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our videos or our video releases of our new kits. And please leave me a comment. If you have more questions, feel free to email us through our store. I'm happy to help if I can. And I hope you like this video. Thanks again, and see you soon.